Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire like our ancestors before us and we tell stories of experiences that we couldn't explain or things that happened that led us in a whole new direction in our life and opened up a whole new possibility. And I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. I love to have these conversations with experts that I meet that have interesting stories and interesting purposes that I feel open us up to understand more about ourselves and why we're here. What the heck are we doing on planet Earth? And I like to help people to take those first steps of their own journey, of their divine conversation, their unique life conversation with whatever they conceive of as their source, God, source, creator, universe, whatever that is for you. And I love to have these conversations. So today I always have these interesting guests who I am the pleasure of meeting. And today we're going to talk to Christopher Wirth. Welcome, Christopher.
I appreciate you having me here.
So Christopher is the founder and president of No Quit Living, which is a speaking, coaching, and training company. And he works with individuals, teams, and corporations to help improve accountability, effectiveness, and efficiency. No Quit Living looks to motivate and inspire clients to never give up on themselves, their goals, and their dreams. And he's the host of the No Quit Living podcast, which has been rated as a top 50 podcast on iTunes in 3 different categories: business, health, and self-help. So he's also a keynote speaker. So if you're looking for someone, I guess you'll figure out when we get to the end of this. If you know your company needs a speaker, then you'll know who to go to. So he's also a basketball coach and a collegiate basketball coach in his career, as well as high school basketball. So basketball features prominently. And he lives in Greenwich, Connecticut. So you guys may not know this, but I spent my junior high and my high school years in Enfield, Connecticut, which is not so far from Greenwich, Connecticut. So this is great, really exciting. And so welcome to the show.
I appreciate two Connecticut people coming at you.
Connecticut. Connecticut. Connect a cut. So tell us your story of how you stumbled into this purpose to help people not quit. No quitting. Where does that come from?
It's about 58 hours and years. No, it's actually interesting. The name actually came, I am a big quote person, and I think I subscribe still to this day to probably 7 or 8 different quotes of the days, different email addresses, and it was probably 2005, 2006, 2007 in that range. I came across a quote by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, which is, "It's always too early to quit." And I don't know what it was, but it kind of stood out to me. I wrote it down, and then it's like when you want to buy a new car or you get a new car, and then all of a sudden you see the exact car, the exact color all over the place. I saw that quote all over the place, and ultimately I got a license plate, which was no quit. And literally from that point forward, it just kind of became who I am. And what I love about the whole concept of no quit is it doesn't matter if you're into sports, business, if you're into music, entertainment, if you're into any genre, any aspect of life, young, old, doesn't matter where you are. Every single person in life has been hit multiple times with obstacles, challenges, and it's all about just getting up one more time. So for me, whether I'm talking to a sports team, whether I'm talking to a business company, a sales team, whether I'm talking to a school and they're going over their objectives of what they want to do with not only their curriculum, but also as teachers, it's something that resonates with everybody. And I think in today's day and age, the reality for me is the concept that really comes twofold is the positivity piece. And I think in our country, not only our country, but I think the world, we need more positivity ever today. And I think what I find, and I have 3 young kids, is everything is negativity first. It's this person's bad, this religion's bad, this political candidate is bad, as opposed to focusing on the good. So for me, we want to inspire people to just never give up. And I think over the last multiple years, my mission has kind of formed and reformed. And it's really the cornerstone for everything has been the no quit concept of just motivating people to never give up on themselves, their goals, or their dreams. And the reality is we all get knocked down. The question is, are we going to get back up one more time?
Yeah, I love that. And I can definitely, as I met you and we had a conversations, I could definitely feel the influence of sports, training through this whole thread of your life. And I played soccer, I also played basketball one season, but I mostly played soccer, right? And the thing about soccer is that the game is fast and you get knocked around a lot. You get knocked down. I mean, there's been games where I've gotten the ball kicked right in my face, like whack, almost like she intended to do it, right? Knock me down on my butt, and the thing is you get back up, like you don't stop just because that's part of the game in a way. Like we expect it to be part of the game of a basketball game or a soccer game or a football game that you're going to get knocked down and you have to get back up. But it's almost like we don't expect that in life. Like we get irritated that it just happened, or we get like upset that this challenge happened and knocked us down. I mean, how do you help people transition that? Because you've been a coach, so you've kind of got this mentality that, hey, that stuff's probably going to happen as part of the game of life. I mean, how do you talk to people about these kind of things?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Is it's part of life, and I think sports for me is a perfect analogy just because it's something that I grew up with. But now a lot of my coaching is not in the sports world. But what we like to go through with a lot of our clients is looking at what potentially could happen and what potentially you could do if and when you have those obstacles or those challenges come and hit you head on. Just like you mentioned in a soccer game, you get knocked down. You don't have 3, 5, 10, 20 seconds to think about it. Like maybe, Carrie, you think you should get up? I don't know. What happens is you get knocked down and you get up immediately. There's no question. Coach didn't say to you, hey, Carrie, you got knocked down, and you're just sitting there on your butt for like 35 seconds looking up at the butterflies. Is there a reason why? And you're like, well, I didn't know. The reality is you get knocked down and almost instantaneously you get back up. But like you said before, in life and in business and in the real world, sometimes people don't expect it. They expect everything to go perfect. And what we try to focus on is be prepared for if and when you do get knocked down. Obviously, don't hope or don't want it to happen. But if and when it does happen, you have a plan. And that's something that we focus on with our clients is look at everything that's coming your way. Look at what potentially could happen. Obviously, you're not going to prepare for every 1,000 potential things, but you look at what most likely is going to happen and you're prepared for it. So if and when you get knocked down, if and when you don't get that sale, if and when you don't get that promotion, and you're not sitting there with your eyes wide open saying, well, what do I do now? You automatically jump into, okay, well, here's what I need to do. And we prepared for it. We planned for it. And now we know what we need to do. And that's something that we're very specific with our clients, is putting together a plan and being disciplined with that plan. I think that's a component of it that a lot of people miss. Is doesn't matter what you want to accomplish or achieve, there is always an importance of being disciplined in your actions and your thoughts. And I think for me, that's something else we do a lot, is we go into the mindset with our clients, saying, okay, how do you mentally get yourself in that place? And I think a lot of companies and people don't do that. And not that you need to spend an inordinate amount of time doing that, but I think a lot of people just always look for the best, anticipate the best, and all of a sudden they get a curveball thrown at them and they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to think. What do I do? So we really try to put our clients in those situations where they expect it, but more importantly, if and when it comes, they've thought about it, they have a plan, and they're disciplined enough to know what they need to do and how to do it.
So many thoughts are coming to me as you're talking. I was like, wham, wham, wham. So I'll just lay them out on you. So like one thought is, the reason why I think a lot of people are afraid of risk is because they're afraid of something bad happening that they didn't anticipate. So they keep themselves like super small and shallow and, predictable. But predictable isn't where the magic happens. Like predictable is like boring, stagnant, and status quo. And nothing magical or amazing is going to happen in what you expect and the predictable plan. Talk about it, because I could see you just like, yes. Like
I love these conversations, because what I find is a lot of people that are in the same mindset, and you and I had a really good conversation before you were on my podcast, but you use the word predictable and you also use the word status quo. And I would say the word, I use status quo all the time. I love predictable. I haven't used predictable. I'm definitely going to start using it now. But also the comfort zone. It's where everything's comfortable, where everything, what's going to happen. On Monday at work, you have this for lunch. On Tuesday, you have a sales meeting from 8:15. You know exactly where it is. But fear is the number one dream killer out there, and it's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of taking a risk. It's the fear of, I don't know if I'm going to get the job promotion. And I always tell somebody, okay, so do you think just randomly somebody's going to knock on your cubicle or desk and say, hey, you didn't put your your name into the hat, but hey, what do you think about a promotion? I said, it's not going to happen. I said, and the other flip side of that is the worst case scenario is it's not going to happen. But it doesn't matter what you want or you think or you hope for. If you don't try, it's never going to happen. And that's something that, goes back to the sports analogy I always tell people is it doesn't matter what your sport is. You, for example, played soccer. I could tell you, and the analogy would be, has there ever been a goal scored in the history when somebody didn't kick the ball?
No.
Has a home run ever been hit when someone didn't swing a bat? You fill in the
No,
blank.
and if somebody, if you watch a soccer game, somebody's always getting flattened by somebody's like well-placed foot to trip them. Like always. And you could cry foul and you can be pissed off the referee didn't catch it, but if you do that, you're going to miss the next play. So like you just have to get up as fast as you can and hope the referee caught it, and if not, like you just keep playing. But if you sit there and like throw a tantrum or get upset because like, oh, this happened to me and why did this happen to me, and you get involved in like, there's this story that my teacher would tell, my spiritual teacher would tell us. She's like, listen, somebody like pierces you with an arrow, take the arrow out. That's the first step. Take the arrow out. But we don't. We leave the arrow in there and we're like, oh my God, this hurts so much. I can't believe that person pierced me with an arrow. How dare they? Who was it? And why? And why did they do? And we leave it in there. And meanwhile, we're dying with the arrow.
Probably to call it, hey, look at my arrow.
This freaking and everyone's like, what, in the support group? Everybody, yeah, I got my arrow too. I got mine like through my side though, and then I got one over here, and I got one over here. Yeah, and everyone's got these support groups. I'm like, where's the freaking pain point? But like, seriously, take the arrow out. Definitely process, right? Because you don't want to repeat the mistake. Yeah. But this isn't about like taking it personally in terms of like your moral character or who you are, or life just throws you punches. That's just what it does.
I want to interject on one thing you said. It hit me. A very good friend of mine, he's also a client. He's a top college basketball coach, and he's coached at some of the most prolific schools in the country. And he has talked about something literally with me for the last 10 years plus, and he shares with all his players is it's make the next play. The next play. And just like you said, you can get knocked down and cry for spilled milk and ask for the referee, or hey, or you make the next play. And it doesn't mean you anticipate or expect not making the shot or the other team scoring. But what happens is you can't worry about it. It happened. It's over. They scored 2 points or 3 points. They got to touch whatever it is. You got to focus on making the next play. And I think so many people overemphasize what just happened. They overemphasize, it's almost like paralysis by overanalysis. Well, they scored and I'm mad and I'm, upset, and all of a sudden 3 minutes later and you're like, and they just scored again because and it's just the focus of, make the next play. And it's so simple to say, but it's so hard to do in some ways because everybody gets caught up in this whole, well, what do I do next? What happens if they score again?
Well, I think it has to, in life it has to do with your ability to actually have emotional intelligence with yourself to the point where you can process something like that. Like it doesn't take you years because you suppressed it, denied it, pushed it away because of your self-worth and you don't want to look at it. No, like if you get really emotionally intelligent, like you can like, damn, okay, I had anger. Woof. Now I've got anger. I'm going to use that anger to propel me into the next decision that I'm going to make because I'm so pissed off that thing just happened. I'm going to take that energy and use it as fuel, like jet fuel, like bam, I'm going to go this way now. And I feel like that's kind of, not to bring it into political space, but that's kind of where we are in our country right now. I was noticing it myself last night watching some debates, and I was feeling it within myself, like all this, like, and I was like, I'm pissed. And then I was like, wait a second. No, I'm not pissed. I'm going to stop using that word. I am fired up. And that's not a bad thing. I am fired up about this country. I am fired up about what we need to do. So like, I think we can use the energy instead of taking it personally and let us drag us down. We can actually take that energy and use it as a fuel to catalyze the next move we're going to make, like you're talking about.
I talk about all the time. It's funny, we speak very similar languages, but what I say is take that energy, use it as fuel for you to take positive action. And your first response is you're upset, you're fired, you're pissed, which is okay. It's natural. But then when I work with my clients, it's okay, internalize that in a positive direction. So even if you don't like that candidate, or if you're anti-Republican or anti-Democrat, whatever it is, it's perfectly okay to have your opinion, but do something in the positive direction. That's something we talk about all the time is take action, but take positive action. And Zig Ziglar, who we all know, I'm sure, amazing motivational speaker, he said something, said it probably thousands of times, but it hit me one day, probably about 10 years ago when he was still alive, is he said, it's okay to have a sports team that you really love and you root for. It's okay to have a political party that you love and you really get behind. He said, but don't be anti somebody else. He said, you can be for your fill in the blank team, religion, whatever, without being, anti. And I remember that I was probably in a good mood that day or just running on the right mindset. But I remember listening to it and I said, wow, I said, our country needs to hear this. Our world needs to hear this. It's okay to be different. It's okay to say, you know what, Carrie, I understand where you're coming from. I respect you, but I'm very much on the opposite side of that argument. And that's so much different than be like, no, like you're wrong. Let me tell you why no, it's okay to differ, but we focus on this, fuel yourself with that energy, internalize it for a second, understand where you're coming from. But if you're going to take action, take positive action and don't take anti anything. And that's the thing that I wish I could sell to the world today is don't take anti-action. It's okay to be different and not want that team to win or your team to lose, but don't be anti somebody. Be pro your stuff or be pro your belief. And I think that would just eliminate so many problems. And I jokingly said this on another podcast last week. I said to a gentleman, I won't go into his beliefs because he's a little bit, 100% behind his stuff. But I said to him, I said, you know what would be interesting? I said, if next political season comes around, I said, if there was no anti-marketing or advertising, he looked at me and he said, there'd be no advertisement. It would just be like, hi, I'm so-and-so, vote for me. He said, because all it is now is why you're a terrible person and why I'm better. And that's not what our country was built on.
Yeah, exactly. Our country was supposedly founded on freedom of expression and having, freedom of choice in terms of your belief systems. And as long as you're not hurting somebody else with it, that you're able to keep living your life the way you choose to live it. I mean, it feels the best for you and your track. And I think that we have gotten too far out in like trying to control other people and control the outcome on everything. And this gets back to the beginning we were just talking about. You're trying to control and predict everything and keep it all like tightened down and like make people do what you want them to do so your life is more predictable and you're in your comfort zone. That's not what we're here for. We're here for our own journey. We're here for our expression in our unique being. I'm the only one that has my thumbprints, Chris. I'm a unique design, and so is everybody else. You're a unique design. You're the only one with those thumbprints. Nobody will ever have it before or after you ever. It's a one-time thing. So like we got to stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and start doing what we're meant to do and stay in our lane. And I think like people aren't going to like it. That's okay. We're not living in the caveman times where if you get kicked out of the tribe, you're going to die. You don't have to be liked by everybody. It's all right.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think you said it beautifully. It's okay to stay in your own lane. It's okay to have your own fingerprints. And it doesn't mean that, you can't change teams or you can't change. I know a lot of people that have changed their political beliefs over the years, and that's fine as long as you're not, hurting somebody else or being, aggressively anti, or that's fine, and the thing I talk about all the time is there's so many ways to do things positively that people just don't understand. And again, it goes back to we're in a country now, especially in the United States, where it's anti first and against second, as opposed to, let me explain to you, Carrie, why, I feel a little different. It's, well, no, well, what about this? And you're wrong. And I think if we eliminated some of those words and embraced change and being different, I think we'd be in a much more fun place, I think.
Absolutely, without stepping over anything, because we also do a lot of that, suppress and deny and then pretend like everything is all hunky-dory with a big plastic smile, and then it's all bullshit at the end of the day, so we got to be real with where we're at. If you want to take a journey, you got to start with where you are right now, and where you are right now might be pretty shitty. Like you might be really angry, you might be feeling this or that, or, things might be messy. You got to start with where you are. That's the truth of the situation. But then like you're talking about, you can use that as fuel. Like there's gold nuggets inside that. I always tell people there's gold nuggets inside the crap that you don't want to look at. Like that's the gold. Like go in there, look at it, not to stay there, not to dwell in it, but to clean it out and make decisions. We want to make decisions about what's the next step. Where do I want to go, rather than sit in your poopy diaper and like say it's not poopy, right? I mean, that's kind of what it's about.
I love that analogy. In your poopy diaper and just say it's not poopy. I like that.
Yeah. How many kids? That's because I have my one of my little children liked to stay in his diaper, and he would just deny that it was poopy, and you could smell it. You knew it was, and you're like, "What is your problem?" It's because he didn't want to be interrupted to go deal with it. But we have to deal with some stuff. Like we got to deal with that stuff. We got to like make a decision around it. And if we don't, it's kind of like I'm sure you see this all the time on your teams when you coach people. These group dynamics is that it actually lowers the energy of the group if there's not positive like forward progress on setbacks. Like if the team lingers in the defeat of the moment, or they blame each other for it and they start infighting, or they feel demoralized by the other team, like those are all psychology things. And you can just see like I've just watched so many games with my kids where you just see the energy going down, 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 and then they just like getting their butts kicked and they hate the game now. So talk a little bit about that. Like I think a lot of people in our country are in the spot of like, I really don't like this game. This game is not fun. Like we need to change the game.
Yeah, I think when I was coaching high school and also at the college level, we had a rule, or we called this 24-hour rule, is you can't celebrate or embark on too much woulda, coulda, shoulda for more than 24 hours. So you lose a tough game, or you lose a game you shouldn't have, 24 hours and it's done. So the next morning, you're on to the next game. And I think it's the same thing when you win a game. And so many championships have been won or lost because teams over celebrate or overanalyze and overthink a loss, and all of a sudden they just tune in a day or two later, and all of a sudden the series is over, and you're like, well, what just happened? So that's something that I think is interesting that you touched on, because it's so easy to say it now, and it was really easy to say when I'm laying out the season for the kids, like, all right, if we have a really good win, 24-hour rule, and we have a really bad loss or a tough loss, 24-hour rule. And it sounds easy, but it's the same thing with companies. You say you lose that sale, or the merger doesn't go through. What happens is people take a day, turns into two, turns into three. All of a sudden, a week later, you as a company, you as a team, you as an individual haven't done anything positive. And not that everything in life is Pollyanna and wonderful and perfect all the time, but when you overanalyze things, you lose a week. And I talk from stage a lot, and I say the biggest and most valuable thing that anybody has is time. You can get money back, you can get opportunities back, you can get sales back, but you can't go back to yesterday, or you can't go back to the game the night before. So I think for us, it's focusing on what is happening in front of us, but more importantly, what happened, that win or the loss, losing the sale, not getting the job promotion, how are you going to handle it the next day? And that's something that we really focus with our clients, is looking at what's coming ahead. Doesn't mean you forget, like you had said before. It doesn't mean you just, snap your fingers and it's done, but you figure out, and like you said earlier, you want to make sure you don't repeat that mistake or repeat that loss, but how do you move forward? And that's what we really look at is being, as I said before, being positive with our action. And it doesn't mean that you forget stuff, but it's focusing on, okay, where can I go from here? And I think that's something that's so much easier said than done, but it's something that we really focus on a lot with our clients is, okay, we need to positively move forward and really focus on what's coming, not so much looking in at the back. And, there's all those sayings and quotes is why the windshield is so big and the rearview mirror is so small, because you're always looking ahead. And same thing with the rearview mirror. The rearview mirror is small as opposed to the windshield. And that's something that's very transferable, because people, and I always have teams look at that, and I'll put up a slide every now and then say, well, it's the same thing with your season, or with your sales cycle, or with your merger. And people say, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way.
I've also noticed, so like if you, with spiritual work, which this is all like so aligned for me, like it's all the same thing, we just say in different words, but it's kind of like if you look at the shadow though, instead of trying to avoid it, like so much energy, people put so much energy in trying to avoid looking at the uncomfortable things, that if you just take an afternoon and just go into it and just look at it and explore it and go, okay, what am I saying to myself? What's going on in my brain that I keep trying to push away and not look at? Like just, the more you face that crap, the less power it has over you. And then you have more energy to move forward. So I also think like there is a way that looking in the review mirror is important, but it's not exactly review, I guess, because it's happening in the moment. Like your brain is just like, trying to avoid, like there's the echoes and the thought tunnels in your brain that just keep happening over and over and over again. At some point you got to look at it to dismantle it and rewire it to take it out of the way. You got to do that work. Otherwise you're just going to keep putting energy in like trying to like get it out of the way, it's going to keep coming up until you actually look at it and address it. And I think a lot of people avoid that part.
It's interesting. We do speak very similar languages, and some of the words are a little different. But what you just said about the energy is something that we also reference to as effort. And what I believe is, it doesn't matter whether you're an athlete or not. Every single one of us only have a certain amount of energy or output that we can do. And if we focus 20, 30, 40% on, like you said, avoiding the shadow or looking behind and overanalyzing it, it means that time or effort you can't put somewhere else. And you can look at it, it doesn't matter how you look at it, but that's the reality, is we all have a certain amount of energy before we get tired and we need to take a nap or we need to go to bed. It doesn't matter how insanely trained you are. It doesn't matter if you're Michael Phelps and you're the best swimmer in the world. Michael Phelps can't swim all day long. He's an amazing athlete. He's the most glorified Olympian of all time, but he never swam from the beginning of the Olympics nonstop till the end. He had a day off here. He did one meet. And that's what I think is so important, is you can't spend all your time, effort, energy other places and expect to have all the energy left over. And I use that analogy and example a lot with my clients, because when you think about it that way, you take a step back and say, wow, you know what? I've never thought about it, is if you exhaust all that, you're not going to have it for the positive things. And I think when people look at it and think about it that way, it almost like refocuses you, where you say, okay, I hadn't thought about it that way. And you know what? I do have a big meeting or a big appointment or a big date tomorrow night. I'd rather be ready and excited for that than spending all my time worrying what could happen.
Yeah, and sometimes taking a step backward is a catapult to taking a bigger step forward. So you can take a step backward, go inside, look at all the crap that you keep trying to ignore, sort it out, let it, bring it to the light, look at it, decide once and for all, okay, I'm not going to think, I don't want that anymore. Make a choice about it. If you take a day to just kind of, like, that's what retreats are great for, is like you take that deep dive, you excavate out all this shit, and you say, I'm not going to have this anymore. Like, this isn't what I'm doing. Now you're going to catapult yourself because you just made a powerful decision. You just cleaned out your closet.
Yeah, no, and I love that. And like you said, retreats and workshops and seminars are so good. And even just taking your own personal retreat. I talk to clients about that all the time. Is not taking an entire day off, but have a tough day or a tough meeting. If it's 2:00 or 3:00, say, hey, you know what? Finish up what you need to do for the next half hour. Why don't you go off and take an hour or two before you go home? And I think it's so valuable. But it goes back to what I said before, is recharging. You can't go 24/7 nonstop. So if you want to go home for your kids or your spouse or significant other, take an hour, take a half an hour and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to just recharge, meditate, listen to some music, listen to a podcast, but I want to be able to attack XYZ head on. And I think that's something that I'm realizing as I'm getting older is, there's so much value in that. And I don't know if it was the young, tough part of me just saying, I can go 100 miles an hour nonstop. As I'm getting older, I'm saying I can still go 100 miles an hour, but it's also really effective to take a 5-minute, hiatus. It's good to take a 20-minute siesta here and there. And all of a sudden you realize if you do it and you figure out what works for you. And that's the thing I talk a lot about with my clients is don't read somebody's blog and say, well, this person said 30 minutes is, the optimal nap time. I was like, for you, it might be 8 minutes, might be 21 minutes. Figure out what works for you, but definitely recharge. And as I've gotten older, I see the value in recharging so much more now.
Absolutely. Well, because you got to repack the energy field. When you're young, you just have all this bountiful energy, and then you get older, you got to be more wise with it. That's why they call it self-mastery. You're supposed to be learning along the way how to not burn the candle at both ends and get like twice as much done. And when you get into the flow state, and I know there's a lot of research out there that's starting to emerge about flow state. I live most of my life in flow state because of the work that I do. And it's just like, it's amazing what I accomplish. And people are like, how do you get all that done? And I'm like, I'm in flow. Like, I'm not arguing with myself all the time. So there's no like points of friction. Like, I am just in the flow. I'm doing the thing and everything flows together. And it's when I get out of that flow that things get difficult and I got to expend energy. So, if I'm in the flow, I'm not really expending energy. I'm just sort of like doing what I'm supposed to do. Like, how many podcasts? I published one every week this whole year so far. I did 5 retreats in different places. I published a book that's going to come out July 27th. So it's like, that's a lot to accomplish in 1 year. It's like more than what people do in like a couple of years. But it's like, because I'm in flow. But people have to like get in the flow, which means they got to get out of the past and out of their, their self-judgments and out of their thought tunnels and their mind mazes and all the stuff that goes on in here, the mind chatter that just like drags people down. They got to get out of that space and into, this trusting part that everything's working out just like it's supposed to.
You said that on my show, and I love that word is the mind chatter. And I think you said it best is when you're in your flow and you stop arguing with yourself. And I don't even want to murder the quote, but I remember reading a quote probably a couple months ago is saying, when you argue with yourself, you're always going to lose. I remember reading that, and I was like, wow.
I want to know who said that. That's great.
Yeah,
Let's look that one up.
But it's so true though. Is when you and I don't think anybody can fully eliminate all that chatter, and I don't think you yourself, myself, could ever say, I'm in the flow 24/7, everything's perfect. But the people that do accomplish those things, like all you've done this year, is you reduce it and you stay in your optimal state, and that I think is like you said, is it's self mastery and not everyone says, oh, when I was young I thought this, and it's not just when you were young, and it's not just what happens in life, but it's the reality is that when you're going as a 21-year-old or a 25-year-old, you're just thinking differently. It's not right or wrong. It's just where you are. And when you get older, all of a sudden you say, okay, now I understand this. And everyone says, well, if I only knew this. Well, if you only knew this, then nobody would make mistakes. We'd all be perfect, and we'd all be billionaires. But the reality is, during life, we all get knocked down. We have those mistakes, but it's trying to figure out what works for you. And I love that concept with my clients, and I always give examples on my show and from stages. Look, I'll share some ideas and concepts that have worked for me, but I'm also going to share some ideas and concepts that have worked for clients of mine and guests of mine on my show, because what worked for me might be the worst thing for you. What might be the worst thing for you might be perfect for me, but listen and learn. And like you said, is find that optimal state of flow where you say, you know what, this is working for me. And the other thing I always say to people is find out what your optimal time is too, because some people work best crazy early in the morning, or middle of the day, or late at night. And that's something that I think I love when people say, well, I'm a morning person. And they say, oh, what does that mean? Well, I get up at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. I'm like, nah, you're not really a morning person. I'm like,
that's mid-morning.
That's like mid, but then I asked the other question, and they said, well, I've been working until 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And I said, no. I said, you're an evening person. I was like, so refocus that so you can have your optimal time. And I think once people understand what that is for them, I think their productivity for whatever they're doing automatically increases.
Yeah, understanding, know thyself is the commandment, and that is definitely true. Know thyself. That's our job, is to know this little thumbprint suit and what this one wants to do, how this one works. Nobody else knows how yours works. You're the one who knows. And, the other thing I love that you're saying is that, and we're going to conclude in just a second, but the thing I love that you're saying is that I hear you not telling people, if you only do it this way, I'm going to coach you so that you won't have any more problems. I love how you're like, that's not going to happen. That is a faulty promise. That is not going to happen. If you're doing that, you're staying too small. So I love how you're like building resiliency. You're teaching no quit. Like, this is about resiliency. It's not about like not creating any more problems.
Yeah, for me, when I started in the coaching world, I learned from a ton of people. I listened. I think my mom and my dad taught me at an early age, ask a lot of questions. And I think people in today's day and age don't ask a lot of questions. But for me, one of the things I'm fixated with our company is different strokes for different folks. I have my foundation that works for me. You have your foundation that works for me. You have your words. I have my words. We say a lot of the same thing, but neither of us are saying this is how it has to be done. These are my 12 steps, and if you don't follow my 12 steps, you're not going to be a client of mine. But I think a lot of times people want to, sell what they do, and not that it's right or wrong, but for me, I realize that I can reach more people, and that's my number one objective with our company, our podcast, our books, and everything, is to inspire as many people as we can. And what I realize is that we have to have different ideas. We have to have different concepts. And you were a guest on my show. I asked some very open-ended questions because I want to know. It's not yes or no, Carrie, do you like this? And like, no one wants to hear an interview like, yes or no, you like the Yankees? No, okay. Yes or no, you're a Republican? No, it's like, well, tell me what books you read. What does success mean to you? Do you have a morning routine? And what I always tell people at the end of my kind of wrap up my show is, Carrie shared X, Y, Z. I challenge you to figure out what works best for you. Or I challenge you, read the book that you met, whatever it is out there, but it's being open-minded. And I think some of the most successful people that I look up to, all walks of life, all genres, all age, all demographics, are people that have listened and learned, but continue to try different things. And for me, if I had to pass along one thing to my 3 kids right now, I would say just be open to trying different things, and don't make a decision at 10 or 12 years old and say, this is how I'm going to do it for the rest of my life, because it might change when you're 13 or 15, or you might be a senior in college and say, hey, you know what? I realized I want to do this job, or I want to try that. And I think that's the best part about coaching and the wide range of clients we have is I learn all the time too. And I tell people that all the time is it shouldn't be me up on stage or me in front of a room, preaching, this is how you do it. I literally will be doing a meeting and all of a sudden I'll grab a pen and a paper and I'll just write something down, like, wow, I never thought about it. And I love doing that because what it also shows my clients is, wow, this guy in this company, they're open and they realize that it's not their way or the highway.
Yeah, because we all have a unique journey. We can learn from each other and we can have points of connection where we understand each other for a moment. We build little bridges to each other, but ultimately the journey is yours. And if you don't take the journey, guess what? Nobody ever will, because this is a one-time pass through this particular thumbprint suit. If you don't explore it, nobody will. So that's important. I want people to explore their thumbprint suits, Chris. So awesome. Well, so this has been great. I really enjoyed this conversation. How can people get to know you? Do you have any, an entry point for them to come in and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So the two ways, we're pretty big on social media. We do a lot on Instagram, and we also have our podcast, which is just our name, No Quit Living. It's on Google Play, Stitcher Radio, obviously on iTunes and Spotify. But also people could check out our website. And for me, I always give my personal email address, which is chris@noquitliving.com. And like you said, is I love connecting with different people. I loved the word you said is building bridges to and from. And for me, one of my personal objectives every day is to meet somebody new and connect with somebody, whether we talk again or not, unknown. But in today's day and age with technology, you're only one click away from possibly a great relationship connection. And for me, I just love to connect with people. So I'd love people to reach out, and it's kind of how you and I connected is, we got introduced, and then you make a connection, and all of a sudden we find out we're both from Connecticut, and there's a lot of fun stuff out there.
That's right. We both played sports and we both like the whole game aspect of living. So cool. Well, this has been really fun. I really enjoyed it. This interview could go on because I love it and we're having so much fun. And I think our listeners have really enjoyed it. And so I want to include everybody and say, hey, if you really enjoyed a part of this, or you got something valuable from it, or you have a question even, feel free to leave a comment. This is going to be on iTunes and YouTube and Stitcher and Spotify and TuneIn and I don't know where else, the website, Soul Nectar Show. So leave us a comment, and Chris and I will be happy to get back on that comment and give you, an answer, or to say thanks. Thanks for leaving a comment. And if you want to leave a review for Soul Nectar Show, I definitely appreciate that. We're always looking to expand the audience and make it bigger and help more people find this inspirational wisdom from all these wonderful people like Chris. And so I welcome you to do that. And now we're going to conclude with kisses. You want to join me? Give everybody kisses. Okay, here they come, people. Mwah. Awesome. Love you all. Have a beautiful week. We'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Show, everybody. Bye.